tighter than an Arsenal shirt.
Hi, we are back here. This is John Krasinski, Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pittsburgh Soccer Now team here. It's the dynamic duo now. It's Mark Goodman, John Krasinski. We are, it's the two of us, and we're talking about previewing the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, specifically this team, this roster. I think it's a final roster, Mark, but you never know with Bob Lilly, do you?
There's one player who is
Right.
listed on the last media list as an invite, and I watched him. You'll notice him, Riverhounds fans, immediately if he's still playing with the team, because he has a tattoo on his left knee. And so that's really interesting. And his name is Luis Argudo.
Louis, yeah.
And he's a guy who's been well-traveled in USL. He's spent some time. He has like 60 something starts for the Columbus Crew in MLS. And, you know, the question is going to be about price. You know, as a former MLS player coming to USL who may not be a starter for the Riverhounds, how much do you have to pay for him? And is he going to be worth it? So we will find out this week, probably, Riverhounds fans, whether he's with the team or whether he was just kind of, you know, there for the fun of it for a little while to see whether, you know, he was going to fit in.
So I don't know if you can see people watching, but I put up a share screen. You could see at least what looks like the Hounds depth chart, if you will, and they're all their players that are currently on the roster. So this is kind of, I mean, this is completely unofficial. This is definitely not what's sitting on Bob's whiteboard. I don't know if you've ever been in Bob Lilly's office. He has a big, gigantic whiteboard, a lot of chicken scratch. But it's the genius doing his work. It's you know, Will Hunting on the chalkboard in Good Will Hunting, that kind of thing. He's the mad genius at work on his whiteboard. But here on Pittsburgh Soccer Now, on Pittsburgh Sports Live, we've got the share screen here. And Mark, just looking at this, I mean, we've got Dane Kelly, Dikwa, kind of going to be the main target guys, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt that's what we're doing. The front three is perfect. The only difference I would have is Cicerone in the games that I watched mostly played on the left and Dixon on the right, but good soccer teams invert their wings all the time to give strange matchups with left-footed players playing on the right and right-footed players playing on the left so they can cut in, and then flipping them every few minutes. That's kind of a thing that you'll see all the time. So but yeah, those three guys are going to start for sure. The only question is whether, because Bob likes to tinker with formation, if he doesn't spend a little bit of time in the early part of the season going with two strikers. And in that case, who are the two strikers going to be? Because there were a few times during the season where it was Kelly and Dikwa, or Dikwa and Cicerone. And so that'll be interesting to see, like, you know, he's basically got four excellent strikers in Dixon, Kelly, Cicerone, and Dikwa. You can't put them all on the field. There's too much good stuff at once. So how's he going to play that out? It's a great question.
Yeah, and I think just looking at the names on the board there, you know, some of it was Yang will also probably be kind of a higher line guy, but I was just trying to kind of put in a depth chart there. You'll see Dixon move when he in the pit scrimmage. He was definitely on the right side, and Cicerone was on the left side. So to your point, yeah, that's probably more likely. Canardo Forbes is sort of an X factor. I think last year, it's where he is on this is about where he was last year. Or sometimes you'd see him on the right and Cicerone kind of in the middle. Yep. Alex Dixon is a very capable, so good on the ball. So there's a lot of rotation, and you can see Alex sometimes in the middle of the field as well. But the Danny Griffin, what's fascinating is Rovera, like on this chart, we've got Rovera out on the right wide, but you know, you've got some of these other players, as you mentioned. You were really interested to see what Toby Sims can do. Even, you know, we talk about, I have an S, but it should be Jesse Williams. So Jesse Williams is a type of player that if he's talented enough to play on that one of those outside back spots, they may not be able to hold him back. They may want to get him on the field a lot. So it'll be interesting. And then that, you know, maybe depends on what they do formation wise. The midfield could look a lot different. You could play two holding mids like they did a lot last year. There's no Todd Wharton. So what the Hounds did quickly after Wharton announced his retirement was sign Angel Kelly Rosales, who's, I think, at least in terms of durability and reliability type of player, is right there. So he could play alongside Griffin, or it could also give them opportunity to play Griffin a little higher at times, maybe more than he did last year.
Yeah, I love this formation. I think we're almost in perfect agreement, in the sense that, like, this is absolutely going to be a formation and a lineup that verbatim Bob is going to play in the first 8 games of the season. The only question for me is, what is the formation going to be? I saw a lot of 4 at the back when I saw them play. And the other interesting that I noticed, and I talked to some folks inside the office at the Hounds, that Danny Rovira was playing defensive midfielder. And he was playing very much, I was just thinking about it as you were talking, John, he was playing very much the Tommy Vankiaziel role of a defensive midfielder, of being kind of the kind of pivot to start the attack, to kind of swing that ball to the left, as right, to dribble a little bit into the midfield to get some penetration before he dished to the wings. But also he could kind of drop right into the middle of the line and make it look like a 5 back. So it almost, you could argue that it's the identical formation that you're looking at, but you could also imagine taking Rovira, who's on the right, sliding him over to the middle, tweaking everybody else over, pushing Griffin and Forbes next to each other, and then pushing Dixon and Cicerone back. And then it functions as a 4-1-4-1, which, you know, the difference between 4-1-4-1 and 4-3-3 is actually very little. It really has to do with how much you put your center striker on an island, how much your wings get back versus how much they're kind of positioned forward in the line to receive passes. There's a lot of questions in terms of the way this will come. The 4-1-4-1 sometimes feels very defensive, the way it's talked about, but you know, it really has nice flex in terms of the way it can be used. But to the point that I was making before, you know, a midfield that is predominantly basically Rovira, Griffin, and Forbes potentially is really, really nice, because I think one of the challenges that Griffin has had in the last year is he's just like Robbie Mertz in his ability to be all over the field. But I think you're asking too much of him when you ask him to really be a pure number 8 and get back and get forward. He operates really well if you let him be a little bit more forward of the midline, and you can spring him, you can free him up by putting Danny Rovira right behind him as the defensive midfielder. He's not the only guy who can go in that slot. Griffin could be the D mid. You also, 2 seasons ago, you had Kenny Forbes kind of sitting deeper and swinging balls and being kind of the pocket passing quarterback, the Ben Roethlisberger of the offense. There's not a whole lot of other guys on the lineup that can do that, though.
So. Right, and think about the versatility that this team has. That Kenardo Forbes, I mean, he could sit deep and do his thing, but yet you've got Rovira, who's kind of coming into his own. And yeah, I saw the 3 of them play together in the central midfield, and they just, I mean, we both know and respect Jackson Walty and Philip Murkovich. Now they're young, they're college players. They're got a way to go. They get to the pros. Jochen Berkenson for Pitt. I mean, these are really good players. Berkenson got a look in the MLS Combine, and the Hounds were just, it was boys against men in terms of just dictating terms in the middle of the field, watching Kenardo, Danny Griffin, and Rovira work as a group. And I think that we will see them a lot in the middle of this year. I think that seems like the direction that they're going in.
We got to talk about goalkeeper, John, because
it's there on my list, and let's just go for it right now. I mean,
yeah,
honestly,
we can wait. I
don't know anything about Kevin Silva or Chase Vosvik, but Vosvik started the last 2 games in preseason, and seems like the consensus was that maybe he's going to steal this. I take it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's interesting that you say that. So did he play 90 minutes in the Pitt game that you saw?
He played, I believe, the 70th minute or so, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to, in the match that I saw, they played Lou City, and I think they played Lou City. Anyways, they switched at 45, and they both looked fine. Vosvik had more to do. Silva didn't really have much to do, and he comported himself just fine. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good estimation. I think pedigree wise, Fosvik has a more impressive resume. I mean, Silva's basically been kind of on the bench for a USL team for the last couple years and hasn't really established himself in any way. That's really the position of most mystery. I mean, the Riverhounds are really deep at center back. You could make an argument that almost every player on the back line that you've got listed there, too deep, is probably ready to go. They're deep at striker. They're deep at midfield. It's goalkeeper that's a total mystery.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've learned, I used to take goalkeeper for granted a little bit as a soccer kind of watcher, writer, analyst. But, you know, the more I've looked at the stats, the more it seems that turning away expected goals at a higher rate for a goalkeeper can really make a difference in individual games specifically, but over the course of the season, it can add up to maybe even 4 or 5 wins for a team. So that's a really big question. And the Riverhounds, the last thing I'll say about it before going back to you, John, is the Riverhounds turnover at goalkeeper has been regular and consistent. Bob Lilly chews through goalkeepers like you and me go through bubblegum, and it's not ideal. And it makes me uncomfortable, but you know, he's looking for something, and maybe he's just not, he just hasn't found it yet.
Yeah, it's death, taxes, and Riverhound goalkeeper changes. Seriously. I mean, and that's, again, Bob has a system, and, you know, in Bob we trust is really the theme that I'm sure the Steel Army believes in, and Riverhounds faithful who are supporting this team, who support, you know, watch our coverage and follow us. I think everyone sort of kind of gotten to that point now where, yeah, there was a certain level of disappointment, and you know, to Bob's to give Bob the benefit of the doubt, he did say they really wanted to re-sign Danny Vitiello. So I will go with that, and I say he probably did on some level want to, but you know, you are playing with how high could they go, and so Sacramento Republic is obviously a well-established organization. Really, maybe a good move for Danny as well. So. Yeah, so that's pretty much the lineup. I think we've pretty much covered that. The only other thing I would say is that the Rovera moving in the middle, I think it opens up the opportunity for a lot of these younger, talented players maybe to kind of steal a spot or two, get some extensive playing time, especially early in the regular season. I think Bob's willing to kind of see some things. I mean, I never forget 2018. Obviously, he was the new coach. It was a new team, but to just throw Thomas Venkiazil out there in Nashville in front of 25,000 people. And it was a tough spot. Even Thomas, even to this day, will say that. But Bob sees some of these young, talented players. He sees something in them, and he's not afraid to go and maybe start a Ybarra or Turo Ordonez, somebody like that. I don't know about Ybarra, but or Toby Sims or somebody along those lines.
Yeah. Guys are going to get chances. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I haven't heard much buzz about Biasi. Kelly Rosales is a guy who we haven't spoken at all about, but he's really, he's got a reputation. He's a grinder. Mm-hmm. He's a great holding midfielder, you know, a leader in defense, a leader in fouls, a leader in yellow cards. You know, you want a little bit of toughness, a little bit of steel in the midfield. And I think hypothetically he allows the team to go 4-2-3-1 if they wanted to, and put Kenny in that deep position so that Kenny can, you know, ping balls and be the deep sitting kind of like dude. But yeah, there's a lot of potential on this team. There's guys we didn't talk about. It does feel like the deepest Riverhounds team I've ever seen. I think this team is, you know, and I think if anyone was bored enough to go back and read last year or the year before's previews that we've done, I don't think I was nearly this optimistic last year. I had a lot of questions, a lot of players who I was like, I don't know, man. I mean, to be fair.
Yeah, you definitely talked about turnover being a concern.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I remember also saying, like, I don't know about Russell Cicerone. Who is this guy? What's the deal? And boy, did I not know what I was talking about. And So, but this year I really feel like this is a great lineup full of players. Robbie Dambrot's a known quantity. Jelani Peters is really talented. I'm a big Mikael Williams fan because he was a Colorado Rapid before he came over. Shane Wheat proved himself last year. I mean, it just up and down the lineup is full of guys who you're like, this guy fires on all cylinders. We don't have to worry about them. And that's amazing. And I think that's why when we did the last preview, most of us picked the Riverhounds either to win the East or to at least finish top 3 and go on to the playoffs and make a deep run.
Yeah, I echo almost everything you just said, and I think there's the depth, the piece that we were talking about, like Angelo Kelly in the middle. I see the Hounds really haven't had that kind of. Maybe Mo Dabo was similar.
Right.
I don't think, and he took as many fouls, at least as what we've seen Angelo Kelly in this couple of years in Charleston. But he does play with this kind of edge, which, you want that. You want guys out there like that, and so, well, Danny Earls, is definitely a favorite of the Steel Army. You maybe, his Colorado Rapids days is, was there for the championship squad. But he's a legend in the eyes of the Steel Army and Riverhounds faithful that go back to the mid 2010s and 2014, 15, 16, 17. He was kind of like this, just come out there and just put it all out there on a line, and just a gritty defensive midfielder who's, by the way, scored some ridiculous goals in the Miracle on the Mind game, but I don't want to get too carried away with that. But yeah,
sell the book, John. Sell the book.
I'm selling it, and he obviously did the artwork for the cover. So, but this is a guy that the Hounds haven't really had that kind of player, and they have in different shapes and forms, but this not like I think Mo Dabo is probably the closest that we've seen that maybe Kelly will be like. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to put a bow on this. We don't go too much longer, but yeah, we kind of covered position by position. We looked at the final roster. We looked at the strategic pieces, but this team is so deep that I think the next question might even just be moot. And that is, who do you think, if you took one player off this roster, the Hounds would have the biggest, maybe biggest loss? Who's the most valuable player on this current roster as it's constructed?
Well, so that's a great question. You lose a lot of spark if you don't have Danny Griffin. He's really the most aggressive and mobile midfielder, and there's not a like-for-like replacement. There's like nobody else who can fill in that spot. You could put Rivera there, but he's not going to really deliver. He's not going to dribble at defenders in a kind of same terrifying way. I think the other guy who is hard to replace is Russell Cicerone, in that, like, Dane Kelly, we didn't talk about it in the last show, but like Dane Kelly's on 99 goals, which is crazy. He's going to break 100 in his next goal, but he's long in the tooth, and it's entirely possible that he's kind of on the back end of his career. He's going to like hang around, bang in 5 goals. I mean, I remember I was covering the Rapids in Edson Buttle's year when he played for the Rapids, and Edson Buttle, this is, God forbid this is what happens, but so I'm saying it out loud so that it doesn't happen. But Edson Buttle, U.S. men's national team kind of legend, was on 99 goals when he started with the Colorado Rapids. And he played, I think it was like 10 games, and he didn't do anything. Nothing happened. And the Rapids were terrible, and they couldn't figure out how to do anything with him. And then finally, in like the 8th or 9th or 10th game of the season, someone got fouled in the box, and there was a PK. And lo and behold, Edson Buttle took it, right? Like, and he scored his 100th goal. It was a big deal, and they put the fireworks up and whatever, but it was kind of super anticlimactic in that, like. So anyways, this is my long-winded way of saying, I don't think, as much as Dane Kelly is the exciting guy that everyone's talking about, I don't think he's irreplaceable. I do think that, like, we pretty much have Dequa and Cicerone and Dixon, and they all get a lot of juice out of that orange. Kelly is like the maraschino cherry on top of the sundae. I mean, he's going to be starting, and he's going to be probably goal dangerous, and he could get 10 goals, no problem. But he's actually the least of our worries, you know? So I don't know. I think Cicerone's the guy though that like I don't know that if he was hurt, that the rest of the offense would function the same way because he had a lot of assists last year too.
He
He's
did.
a really productive player, and he also draws a lot of fire. Like he comes charging down that side and he shifts the defense over to his side. Dane Kelly is that way in the sense that you got to body him up, right? You can't leave him alone in front of goal or at the back post on a set piece. He will punish you. But with Cicerone, you got to have two defenders to kind of cover his side. Anyways, is there a guy that you think is like irreplaceable that like we'd be in deep doo-doo if we didn't have him on the roster? I mean, I will point out we don't have a third goalkeeper, so that's a minor problem.
That's a good point. But again, yeah, I mean, it was interesting in 2020 when Canardo Forbes got hurt. They played well until I think they overachieved. They played well. A lighter schedule, I thought, that year too. But that's still a guy that I think if you take him out, then you lose a little bit of the guy that really truly helps dictate terms. Because when the ball's at his feet, everybody sort of pauses. And I think to your point about now the ball's going to be at Canardo's foot, and you're a defender and you're center back and you're an outside back, and you've got Cicerone making this run, and you've got Dane Kelly, like you can't give that guy an inch, and then you got Alex Dixon. But the guy that's going to orchestrate everything, it's going to be Canardo, and they think he'll kind of pick his spots this year. But to take him out, I still think he's the guy that he's the leader, the general, the guy on the field that knows what Bob Lilly wants and carries that over onto the field. And one thing I noticed in the pit scrimmage, again, having an opportunity not really to hear many fans and hear what's going on the field, is Canardo is a lot more vocal than I thought he was. I really thought he was more quiet but just watching him vocalize and kind of run the show. And I think he is somebody that when he's out of the lineup, I think there are guys that step up, and we've seen that. And I think Danny Griffin for sure. But you got veterans. You got so many veterans, and Dixon's another one that I think that his presence won't be missed in the leadership as much in some respect, but in terms of dictating terms of play, I think he's still a guy that takes the Hounds to just another level that we're talking about. When we're talking about this team making that next step, as we said in the previous show, I just, barring any major rush of injuries or something, I can't not see this team finishing first or second in the regular season and being a threat to go to the USL Cup final. So I think that, and take Canardo Forbes out of the picture, and I think that would be a blow.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on that note is I think we haven't spoken much about the fire and I hope there's a media day for the team. I haven't seen one announced.
Looks like there is going to be on Tuesday.
Woohoo! But I think the team is going to have a fire lit under them by having last season's playoffs yanked away from them by COVID. USL teams had a terrible 2020 because of the way COVID played out in the league. It was just a really hard year. Fans were, and I think some of us you work in a hospital in your day job. My wife's in the medical profession in her day job. Like, we were all freaking out from COVID in 2020. And then the league decided they were going to play road games, unlike MLS, who did the bubble thing, and unlike the NBA. And we all were kind of like, that's crazy. That's not going to work out. And then teams, occasionally went down with COVID, and we had these, long, catastrophic, weird years. The Riverhounds had 2020, which was kind of half ruined by COVID. And then we had 2021 fully ruined by COVID. And now it's 2022. And it's like, can we just have a normal year? Can we have a solid year that isn't ruined by any, pandemic or plague or, natural disaster or whatever it's going to be? Like, we just want a solid normal soccer season, please, and with dollar beers. And if we don't have dollar beers, at least $2 beers. $2 beers would be okay too.
Well, I think I don't think there's a better way to end this segment, this show, because let's hope and pray and to the soccer season goes the way we want it to go this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, normalcy. What is normalcy these days? We don't know, but you know, that was something that would bring a lot of joy to a lot of soccer fans in Pittsburgh and around the country. USL Championship is definitely making strides. Like I said earlier in a previous broadcast, I think they're definitely leaning. They're trying to get leaner and be a little bit more quality over the quantity of teams. And I think that's something that we're hoping that will provide a quality product to the year this year and then into the future. Because I think
whether it was the league's choice or not, based on MLS Next Pro, to lose all the 2 teams, like it'll probably be a good thing overwhelmingly for the league. You know, we also lost Charlotte, who were really just not pulling their weight in the East. There's teams in our division who are really exciting and really fun. And I think the other thing is most of them want to be in USL. They didn't come, you know, kind of like pulling the RV through the national park on their way to someplace better. You know what I mean? Like that was never fun with Nashville, and it wasn't fun with any of the other teams, where USL was just a thing to tick off on the bucket list or the obligations for Don Garber to go to the new league. Like, this is our league, like Birmingham, Memphis, they're here to stay. It's great.
I slight counterpoint to that is that I think USL, in terms of getting a little bit of credibility, more Cincinnati than Nashville, but I think Cincinnati sort of gave them some credibility. I mean, the fact that 25,000 people were at every single one of their games almost, I think there's a certain level of credibility that came with that. And I think the USL certainly milked it and took advantage of it and enjoyed it. And I think everybody in USL enjoyed the fact that they kept bowing out of the playoffs early and never quite made deep runs anyway. So I think,
I'll add to that point that maybe Detroit City is the next big FCC, that like they have a massive following in NISA, and jumping leagues from NISA to USL might give them another bump, which would be great for them. I kind of am horrified by them because they have a very obnoxious fan base who have a huge chip on their shoulder. But I also really like that. I think they bring a lot of sauce to the league, and I really enjoy it. I think it'll be great.
I just think having a team from Motown, I think Detroit, that's great. We just need Cleveland now. We bring Cleveland into the picture. Man, that would be so much fun for Pittsburgh.
And Buffalo. We could have a great three city rivalry between Cleveland, Buffalo, and the Hounds. It'd be great. But somewhere down the road.
Relegated to NPSL because that's where it actually exists. And so, but that's another topic for another day. Mark, cool. Thanks so much, for your contributions to Pittsburgh Soccer Now and for joining me tonight. A lot more to come. We'll be doing post-game wrap-up shows, and we'll probably do sounding off on soccer here and there through the course of the season. So really looking forward to it. I think we both agree this is a promising year for the Riverhounds.
Soccer's back.
All right. Have a good night, and thank you.
It was fun. This is like the best thing in the world. Soccer's back. I'm excited. Clearly, you should be too.
Sure thing. Absolutely. All right. Good night, Mark.
Working.